Okay, so I sound like I smoke like 12 packs a day. And because of that, I am even my sorry guys, but my in-person kids today are gonna have to be watching this the second half of the day because I am well on my way to losing my voice if I keep teaching each class period. So sorry, I know it's awkward whenever your teacher's like sitting right there and you're watching her on the screen, but I can't keep this up. All right. So I'm even chewing like and sucking on a peppermint right now. This is my like second one, and it's not doing anything to help. I feel fine. Sound like crap though. Anyways, all right. Here we go. Lesson 4. I know some of you sitting in class, we've already started some of this information, but it is what it is. I got to get it to my online kids too. So we've been talking about, kind of the major factors leading up to World War II. Lesson 3 was specifically about Hitler and the Nazis and the Nazi state and how that gets going. And from the get-go, especially even if you read portions of Mein Kampf that he writes in the early 20s, the whole point is to not just create the superior race and not just have, the Aryan people thrive within the German borders, but over the entire world. I mean, Hitler's goal is world domination. So it's all about invade, conquer, resettle the German people. Of course, breeding. We talked about that even yesterday with the Lebensborn program. And then you pretty much either enslave or kill off the inferior ethnicities. So the Slavic people are also considered ethnically inferior in Hitler's mind. You've got Jews, and then like just a little bit above them, the Slavs. So a lot of students actually don't know that there are work camps, concentration camps, and hundreds of thousands of Slavic people also killed in the Balkans, and then also just across Eastern Europe as he continues his path of destruction. So he does build up, as we talked about in lesson 3, Germany's economy and turns it around. And he does this by basically ignoring the Treaty of Versailles. He's going to do the same thing with the military. He's going to build it up from 100,000 to about 500,000 in the mid-30s. He's going to start building airplanes that he's not supposed to build. He's going to start building submarines that he's not supposed to build. He's going to start doing all of these things to remilitarize Germany. And if you're wondering, like, why the crap don't the Allies see the writing on the wall and stop him? Well, it's because, again, like they have their own pretty massive crisis to be dealing with at the moment, which is the Great Depression. And he's a charismatic, charming guy that's telling them, the last thing that I want is a war. I fought in World War I and was even wounded twice. I saw the devastation of that. That's the last thing that I want for Europe. And being his manipulative, charming, charismatic self, and he's through that convincing the leaders of the Allies that he's not really going to do anything. And it's been enough years since World War I that Great Britain and France are kind of cooled off, so to speak. Like they're like, yeah, we were pretty harsh on Germany, so rightfully so, they're kind of pissed. So if they want to kind of feel good about themselves again, we'll allow it. And they've got this leader that's trying to give them back some hope and some pride, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as he really doesn't act on any of this stuff. And because they believed him, they didn't do anything about it. So this is that policy of appeasement that specifically Great Britain's really going to come into with Germany in the late 30s. Excuse me, headed up by the British Prime Minister at the time, Neville Chamberlain. And we'll talk about him some more here in just a second. But Hitler's going to start off by testing the waters to see, how far he can go with this by marching the German military into the Rhineland. So the Rhineland, if you look on the map here, is in kind of that darker tan that he's going to go into in 36. And that's that buffer state that was created by the Treaty of Versailles that was still German land, but he is not allowed to put in any military installations in there again because it's supposed to be this buffer state. Well, he goes into it in 36. France starts losing their mind pretty quickly. France is jumping up and down going, oh my gosh, what are you guys going to do about this? Because France isn't going to do anything about it. Because France is too weak to do anything without Britain's backing and support. Well, Britain's kind of we're not going to do anything because he seems like a pretty nice guy. And, he's not he's not invading France. He's still in his territory. He's not supposed to be there with the military, but it'll be fine. So nothing happens. So Hitler, in a lot of ways, sees this as okay, I've tested the waters. I've gotten away with my first little thing. Let's see if I can get away with some more. So by 1938, he's going to annex Austria there in yellow, along with the Sudetenland in yellow. So there was absolutely no resistance for the most part to the Anschluss, which is what this is called. That annexation is known as the Anschluss. And they literally march into Austria and the Sudetenland, and everybody is sitting there with open arms, welcoming the Nazis. There was literally no pushback. And so again, the Allies look at this as kind of the people want this for themselves, and there's no resistance whatsoever. So he's really not doing anything wrong. And so again, this element of appeasement continues on. By March 1939, he goes into states within Czechoslovakia. He meets some resistance there. Not everybody in Czechoslovakia was a Nazi and wanted to be a part of this. So this is when the Allies finally kind of go, hey man, now's about the time you need to kind of stop. Okay, so we're going to let you have what you've gotten so far, but now it's time to stop. And they specifically mention Poland. Okay, it specifically gets told to Hitler, don't jack with Poland. And of course, you'll see in a minute, that's exactly what he does. But in the late 1930s, he's also shoring up alliances. Of course, the first person that he goes to is his favorite dude, which is Mussolini. So they're going to sign the Rome-Berlin Axis, which is how the Axis powers are going to end up getting their name during the war. They're going to sign this alliance between themselves in November of 36. And then Germany is also going to sign an alliance with Japan, which becomes known as the Anti-Comintern Pact. And they promise, essentially, that they both have a common enemy in communism. Okay? Francisco Franco, who becomes the military dictator of Spain by the late 1930s, is also big buds with Hitler. During World War II, Spain is going to have a policy of neutrality. That's a load of crap. Spain was completely supporting Hitler and Nazi Germany. They just weren't providing troops, but they were providing everything else that they possibly could to aid and abet the Nazi cause. This is just simply talking about the Anschluss. The slide is and the annexation of Austria and the Sudetenland. So, again, with that being said, by 38, again, he's taken over the Rhineland, or excuse me, not taken, he had that to begin with, but he's militarized the Rhineland. He's annexed Austria and the Sudetenland, and then conquered states within Czechoslovakia with some resistance. Not a ton, don't get me wrong, but some. So the Munich conference is held. And again, this is when they basically tell him, hey, we're fine with what you've gotten so far, but stop now. And of course, you see Hitler shaking in the picture above my head. Neville Chamberlain, who is the prime minister at the time of Great Britain, you see them shaking hands, smiling, all seems copacetic, okay? And it's because Hitler puts on his charm again, right? Like, he's charming, he's charismatic, he's manipulative. So, of course, he's going to be like, oh, absolutely, I swear I'm done. Oh, yeah, like, I completely agree. Like, I just wanted all the Germans truly together again. We just want to see Germany unified and proud of itself again. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that he's saying. And again, like, it sounds very peaceful, very good. And so Chamberlain is going to go back to Great Britain and be all like, I'm the peacekeeping prime minister, and I've kept Europe from going to war. Across the London Times, there's even going to be there's going to be a headline that says, Chamberlain created the peace for our time. There is a parliamentary statesman at the time jumping up and down going, oh my God, please stop it. Do not listen to this. This is crap. He's a madman. Why are we working with a madman? Why are we trying to appease a madman? And this is one of my favorite historical figures of all time, Winston Churchill. So Churchill, very famously, after Chamberlain gets back from Munich, talking about how he's been like the best, most awesome peacekeeper on the planet, he makes the quote, an appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping it will eat him last. It's one of my favorite quotes from Churchill. He is just kind of this unapologetically brash kind of guy. He hates Hitler. He hates him from the get-go. He sees right through him. He sees him for what he is. And because of this, because Churchill is constantly saying Chamberlain is an idiot, you can't make peace with a guy like this. You've got to cut him off before he becomes an even bigger problem. He's saying this throughout the late 30s. Well, whenever Hitler does invade Poland, just like he said he wasn't going to do in September of 39, of course, Churchill's going, I told you so, and Chamberlain is completely discredited. And this is how Winston Churchill ends up being the prime minister of Great Britain during World War II. And thank God for that. They needed a bulldog in the seat of power. He is going to be, in my personal opinion, one of the greatest leaders of the 20th century. His speeches and his leadership abilities, and again, that like old just bulldog, like, you're not going to bully me. You're not going to bully my people. Like, we are going to get through this. Like, just that digging his heels in kind of mentality is really what kept Britain from losing and holding out until the U.S. gets involved after Pearl Harbor. Because, Great Britain is going to single-handedly keep Hitler at bay for about 2.5, 3 years. So, and in large part due to his leadership. This is what I was talking about a little bit ago. Broken promise, shocking. He's going to start, even after the Munich conference, doing everything he said he wasn't going to do. One of the things that he realizes really quickly about invading Poland is if he invades Poland, he may have to deal on the other side with Stalin, in the Soviet Union. And he doesn't want to do that this early on. Remember, Hitler hates communists, so he does not like Stalin and the Soviet Union. He likes him in the sense that they're both evil fascist dictators, But as far as their political ideologies, they're pretty different. In the economic sense. And so it's kind of, everybody's shocked whenever Hitler makes this Nazi Soviet non-aggression pact with Stalin in August of 1939. Well, they don't realize that just a week later, his plan is to invade Poland. And the agreement was made with Stalin because he said, hey, as soon as I take Poland, as long as you don't mess with me. Sorry, guys. I know, this is what happens. My voice will, go back to normal, and then it'll, it's fun stuff. But he says to Stalin, once I take over Poland, you get the eastern half of Poland back. And so Stalin, of course, is like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. And so that's why they signed this pact. Well, again, Britain, France, nobody else knows that that's what's going on and about to go down. So, September 1st, 1939 marks the beginning of World War II, okay, in Europe. Now, because 2 days later, as you can see there at the bottom of the screen, Britain and France are going to declare war on Germany. Here's the deal. There's an entire other theater to this war that is pretty massive, and that is the Pacific Theater. World War II is pretty much fought, in two places, Europe and the Pacific. So you have to understand how that portion of the war gets started as well. Well, Japan sees itself very similarly to Germany. They feel like they are the superior Asian race. And they are imperial minded. They want to conquer the Asian world. And they feel as if everyone else in the Asian world is inferior. So, Japan is going to start its imperial quest to dominate in 31. So, if you're keeping track of the timeline, this is actually a good bit before Hitler. Okay, Hitler doesn't even gain the chancellorship in Germany until 33. So Japan has already started doing their stuff 2-3 years before, Hitler even secures complete power. So how they're going to get, and so a lot of historians actually feel like 31 could be considered the start of World War II and not 39. So what they're going to do to start it out, and I hate that you can't see behind my head because it's a pretty good map. It's just going to show you the territories that they have, which is that of Japan and then the Korean Peninsula. But in red is what they're, of course, trying to get into throughout, and they are going to conquer between about 31 and 38. Okay? That's what's in that lighter red. So, how it all gets started is an incident known as the Mukden Incident. They're going to dress up as Chinese soldiers. They're going to go blow up a railroad. And they're going to say, oh, the Chinese did it. And they're trying to keep us from, providing for our people. And so there's a justification in our invasion of China through Manchuria. The League of Nations is going to come in and do an investigation. And it's going to be very, very obvious very quickly that it was Japan that did this, that it was not the Chinese that blew up the railway. Why would they blow up their own railway? Come on. But this is also hugely important because this is the moment that everyone in the world realizes that the League of Nations is a joke, okay? Because the League of Nations can't do anything. So they come in and they're all like, oh, we know that it was you, Japan. And Japan is basically like, well, what are you going to do about it? And the League of Nations is like, we're going to tell you that we don't like it and that we know that it was you and not China, and Japan's going, oh, okay, well, we don't really care. And that, again, that signals not just even to the Japanese, but in a lot of ways to Hitler. We can now kind of, I mean, they're not going to really do anything to us if we start trying to, like, you know, become more imperial and conquer more places. So over the course, as it says, of the next several years, I mean, that's what they're going to start taking over China and islands all throughout the Pacific. So Japan is awful to the Chinese people. A lot of times, for whatever reason, this isn't taught. You could say, I mean, they're on level, maybe even a little more brutal than the Germans were to the Jews. And I get it. If you're sitting here going, wow, that's something to say, well, I mean, yeah, it's a pretty low bar. But I mean, that's the truth. So the rape of Nanjing is what this video is about. You have to watch it on YouTube. For whatever reason, it won't let you watch it via the slideshow. In class, this is where I'm going to pause and we're going to watch this because, and those of you at home, I really want you to do that as well because you need to understand how horrific the Japanese were to the Chinese during World War II. And this is why tensions are still really high between those two groups of people in Asia. They still don't like each other. The Chinese still really don't get along with the Japanese. Again, the rape of Nanjing, they're going to kill 300,000 people in 6 weeks. They're going to rape 200,000 women. They're going to place women into Japanese military encampments as sex slaves. I mean, like, it's bad. They kill babies, children. I mean, if you Google some of the images coming out of occupied China during World War II, it's going to hurt your heart. I'm just warning you. So there we go. All right. Okay. So this man right here is going to be the leader of Japan during World War II, Hideki Chojo. And he's a military dictator, basically, is what he is. And again, has that same mentality of racial superiority in Asia, and that, imperial conquest. So I want you to look right here in green is the Japanese Empire in 1930. In orange, you can see between 31 and 33, they get into that northern portion of China at the time known as Manchuria. And of course, like I told you, the initial push into that was through the Mukden incident. Then down here in this kind of orange tan color, you start to see them pushing south. Nanjing is the capital of China at the time, and they get down into Nanjing, of course, in 1938. So their invasion, though, into French Indochina in the 40s or 1940, is when the United States says, hey, okay, enough. Because we were the main suppliers of oil and scrap metal and steel to Japan. And when they start taking over French Indochina and islands all throughout the Pacific that were, of course, slowly getting closer and closer to a very, very important territorial holding and military installation for us, Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, we start warning them to stop and place sanctions on their imports from us. So if you look at these numbers from between 37 and 41, it is a steady decline of imports. And it's because we're sanctioning them for their imperialist actions in the Pacific. Okay, it was our way of saying we do not agree with what you're doing. So what do? Well, they start planning the attack on Pearl Harbor because they basically say, okay, if you're going to cut us off, then that just will justify our need to continually expand in the Pacific so that we can get more resources. And, eventually they wanted to make it to our west coast. I mean, that was the plan for Japan. They wanted to make it, of course, to the California, Oregon, Washington coastline. And their first, major step towards that is weakening our naval base at Pearl Harbor. But we will talk more extensively about the attack at Pearl Harbor next week during lesson 5, because they make some mistakes in their attack at Pearl Harbor. Unfortunately, they're pretty good too, but they do make a couple of major mistakes that help us out. Okay, this crash course is a great review of everything that we've talked about. Your formative assessment will be on Monday now. And of course, everybody is a remote learner next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Unless you have that biology EOC on Thursday, then you'll be coming up to take it. There's going to be lesson 5. You're going to be responsible for that, along with those of you that are on level, an assignment. And then those of you that are pre-AP, y'all will be getting your instructions for your big World War II battle project. So that's on Monday, though. Y'all have a great weekend. And again, I'm sorry I sounded probably not just bad, but super annoying. I can't help it. So, all right. See you guys later.